Hello, and welcome back to another episode of Seeing Better with Shelby Nix. This is, I think, the third episode I've recorded so far, and so far so good. Every time feeling a little bit more comfortable behind the mic, getting my sea legs, all the things, so let's hop right into it. Today's episode is going to be about 5 business books that are worth their weight in gold. I've read a ton of business books over the years, and have even started a bit of a content library in our office of all the books that I've read, because every time I read one, I want to share it with other people, especially if it's really, really good and has a lot of insightful tips. So today I'm going to be sharing 5 business books that have made it to the top of my stack that stand out in my mind as the best of the best. There are so many different personal development and business books out there, and to be quite honest, a lot of them are snake oil. Not all of them have memorable and tangible aspects to them that I currently use in my day-to-day life. So without further ado, let's get right into it. 5 business books that are worth their weight in gold and that you should read this year. Number 1, 10x is Easier Than 2x by Dr. Benjamin Hardy. This one is mind-blowing and an absolute game changer. I highly recommend that you check out 10x is Easier Than 2x. Essentially, Dr. Benjamin Hardy is an organizational psychologist who has phenomenal content that I can't recommend enough. He has Instagram, YouTube, podcast, all the things, but his books are really where the bulk of the content lies. 10x is Easier Than 2x, I believe, came out last year, but he has a number of books that cut through all the noise that's in the business sector and really get down to the nitty gritty. So 10x is Easier Than 2x is essentially about the 80-20 rule. The 80-20 rule is Pareto's principle, and if you take away one thing from today's episode, Pareto's principle is something that you should definitely be taking a look at, and I'm sure we'll do an entire episode just on that alone. But Pareto's principle is about 20% of the inputs that you have in nearly any part of your life. It could be in business, it could be in your nutrition, it could be in your fitness, it could be in the people that you hang out with, end up producing 80% of the results. Now, if you think about that, that really means that most of the inputs that we currently have are the fluff. So by identifying the key 20%, you can amplify the effectiveness of any part of your life. And by reading this book, I took so many learnings out of it. I was able to cut away all the fat, all the noise, all the things that really were not serving me or getting me closer to my goals, and ultimately producing this ideology and this concept into my own life. 80-20 is something that I always do if I feel burnt out, overwhelmed, or like what I'm doing really isn't making much of an impact in whatever it is that I'm struggling with. I always go back to that as a way to bolster myself and also ground myself in what's the most important. Dr. Benjamin Hardy is really revolutionary and somebody who you should check out if you're interested in organizational psychology, being the best entrepreneur that you can, or ultimately just making your life better. And he talks about using this principle in all facets of life, not just in business. So I highly recommend checking out any of his books, but specifically 10x is Easier Than 2x. Number 2, Deep Work by Cal Newport. This one's always at the top of the charts, so it's probably something that you've heard before. But what I will say is that Deep Work has a lot of bulk to it, similarly to Atomic Habits, which I know is, I believe, the number one, probably is still number one in this category. But Deep Work has a very interesting principle attached to it, and that is the concept of what deep work is and how it can benefit us in our day-to-day lives. Deep work is something that transparently does not always happen for many people in the workforce. Regardless of if it's something you want to do or something that you know that you need to do, deep work is ultimately one of those things that can sometimes fall off of our to-do list, even though it's the most important thing that you could be doing. Deep work can come in a multitude of facets, and it doesn't necessarily just mean writing, although in Cal's case, I do believe it is writing, that's what his deep work is. And he mentions in the book that generally the morning time is where most people's deep work tends to happen. And Benjamin Hardy also echoes similar sentiments as well. I find that to be my space of deep work as well, where I can really dig deep. In the afternoon, I tend to be very tired and sometimes face that slump. So being bright and bushy-eyed in the morning helps me to produce that deep work. So in my case, that's marketing, product development, ideation, data mining, all that kind of stuff that tends to take an extra layer of brain power. Whereas in the afternoon, generally what I'll do is more administrative tasks, meetings, other things that don't necessarily take as much of my brain space, or at least the things that tend to take a lot of the brain space for myself. Everyone is different. So deep work helps you evaluate what that means for yourself in your business and finding the space to carve that out, which leads me into my next recommendation, which is Essentialism by Greg McKeown. Essentialism is very similar to the other two aforementioned books in the sense that it cuts out all of the fat and the unnecessary parts of our current state of the world that don't get us to where we really want to be. So in Essentialism, it is a business book, but it's also recognized as something that's more of a way of life more than anything else. So Essentialism is exactly what it sounds like, essential, finding what is absolutely the most essential in your life and cutting out all of the rest. So perhaps your key values are family, fun, and travel. Anything that does not pass those tests or does not pass that lens is therefore deemed unessential and then therefore off your to-do list. This is so daunting for people that are executors and are really good at to-do lists, which I know is something that I found was a strength of mine in the past and still is, but that's no longer my goal. My goal is not to achieve every item on my to-do list, but rather think about what's going to give me the biggest results in every area. So what that could look like is instead of going to a 60-minute HIIT interval yoga class every day and driving over there, paying for parking, paying for the class, what my version of Essentialism is in fitness would actually just be lifting 30 minutes a day for 5 days a week and giving myself 2 days to rest, which is giving me the minimum effective dose of what I need in fitness instead of going for other aspects that really don't have to do with the essential. When I'm working out, what it comes down to is that I want to really build muscle and feel the best that I can. So finding that strength training routine has helped me find what's most essential in this area. And it can be carried in every single realm of your life as well. Number 4, The One Thing by Gary Keller. You'll see that many of these books all have very similar themes. And what I found in reading, at least 100 business books over the past 5 years is that you don't remember specific aspects of the books, or that's generally my case, but it's rather the overall theme and message that you get out of it and ultimately following those people that you find to be very impactful even after you've read the book. So perhaps you subscribe to their podcast or follow them on LinkedIn, purchase some of their products, whatever the case may be. That's the litmus test that I am running this through. So do I listen to their content still today? And does the theme still resonate with me even after reading it for several years? The One Thing passes that test. I listened to their podcast, which is pretty good. The One Thing, however, is a very simplistic book and a very simplistic idea. And that is that there is a quote unquote lead domino in every part of your life, specifically here with business. So there's a lead domino that if you focus on that one aspect, all the other dominoes will render obsolete and therefore not be on your to-do list in the day-to-day. This is especially helpful for people who run their own business or find themselves in a leadership role. And that is focusing on the key boulder, is what I will call it, to improve your business. So there are boulders and there's small rocks. This is an analogy that I learned during my health coaching training, but I've also brought into business as well. And that is that there are boulder type items that plague your business and your life in the day-to-day. So perhaps a boulder, which is a big issue that you're looking to tackle, could be hiring more people, or it could be reducing your costs, or it could be launching a new product. So those are bigger items that will take longer, but ultimately will help the business amplify in such a large way. Whereas the smaller rocks, may be able to be tackled by other people on your team, maybe more junior members that you want to give some space to, or even AI at this point. So something like that could look like, creating an email piece of content. It could be researching a particular competitive product, whatever the case may be. You want to prioritize the boulders, and then therefore there's going to be space for the boulders within your proverbial jar, and the small rocks will fit where they may. And in the one thing's case, that's the lead domino that leads to knocking down all the other following dominoes. So the one thing, if you're looking to really tailor your reading ventures over the next couple of months and you only have time and space for one, I would recommend reading The One Thing, because it is absolutely the most simple, smallest, impactful book I've read to date. Number 5, The 4-Hour Workweek by Tim Ferriss. This is likely a book you've heard a lot about, but until you've read it, I don't know if you can accurately explain what is encapsulated in this book. It's a rather big book, but it's one of the books that I've actually kept for myself that I reference every year or so to just take a look at. Now, I'm a person that works in the corporate world, so the 4-hour workweek might not seem like something that would fit my current state of life. However, I do think that this book shares a lot of the other themes from the other books, and that is that you can simplify and automate so many parts of your job and of your business, of your life, that you may not have thought about before. So in the 4-hour workweek, Tim talks about living abroad and maintaining a business. He also talks about VAs, which is a virtual assistant. I think that was something that definitely popularized the idea of a virtual assistant, and many other aspects of being an entrepreneur, but also automating different parts of your life. And I think this is so timely that it's coming back into the fold. I know it's always usually on the New York Times list to some extent, but I think it's really fascinating to look at the 4-hour workweek in the state that we are today in 2024. That meaning that there have been different migrations to the 4-day work week for one. So that's one part of it. And then also the advent of AI and the influence of AI in business. I think that this book is going to have a resurgence with a newer generation, and hopefully to the people that I'm talking to as part of this podcast as well, in the Gen Z demographic. But there are so many ways that we can automate and expedite what we're doing in the day-to-day. There's so many things that can be sped up and then therefore obsolete if we're able to set up the correct systems to do so. And Tim talks about specific and tangible tactics to get there. It's actually incredible how much of the knowledge that was part of this book that I believe was written in the early 2000s, I want to say it was maybe 2006, that still holds. Now, there's different parts and different specific tactics that likely will look different in today's day, now 20 years down the line. But it's such an eye-opening book if you're looking for more space and time in your life and ultimately autonomy. Now, I have to give a shout out to one more book that didn't necessarily make the list, but is absolutely essential for anybody that is looking to see better in their life. And that's going to be hopefully the people that are listening to this podcast. But Mindset by Carol Dweck is absolutely a book that has changed my life and is referenced pretty much at least once a month in my lifetime. There's always somebody that's talking about mindset. And if you haven't read it yet, it's another very short book, but very impactful book that has a theme that will render useful throughout the dawn of time. So Mindset by Carol Dweck is a book that features two types of mindsets, and she's a researcher who knows a lot about the subject, so she's a psychologist. Mindsets being either a fixed mindset or a growth mindset. Many of you probably have already heard about this, but just as a refresher, the fixed mindset is somebody who thinks that they only have a certain amount of talent, only a certain amount of money that they're able to make in their life, but can also be extended to quite literally any part of life and business. And then there's other people who have a growth mindset or who believe that they can tackle any problem that they come up against. Having a growth mindset is absolutely essential to winning in business, no matter what that looks like. If you're an entrepreneur, if you work for a corporate company, if you work for a small company, whatever the case may be, having a growth mindset in any goal that you want to achieve is absolutely essential. I've been reflected back to me that I have a growth mindset, which is one of the biggest compliments I could be given, and something that I want to continue to share and spread across this message of the podcast and also just in life in general. Having a growth mindset, if it's not something that you currently believe that you possess, is something that can be built. It's the essence of a growth mindset there in the name. But I will say that there are times where I catch myself having a fixed mindset, and ultimately this growth mindset focus has allowed me to get a little bit closer to that, even in very, very tough spots when it feels like there's no out, there's no clear direction, but there's always a way to have a little bit of that silver lining coming through without being overly optimistic, of course. So net, these now 5, what turned into 6 business books, make my top shelf list, and something that I recommend you check out if you're looking for more business books, and ultimately the ones that will give you the most bang for your buck and the bang for your time. So let's do a small recap of what those were. Number 1, 10x is easier than 2x by Dr. Benjamin Hardy. Number 2, Deep Work by Cal Newport. Number 3, Essentialism by Greg McKeown. Number 4, The One Thing by Gary Keller. Number 5, The 4-Hour Workweek by Tim Ferriss. And 6, which is a bonus, Mindset by Carol Dweck. Highly, highly recommend that one. And all of them in general, they all encapsulate so many different parts of having a growth and business-oriented mindset that will get you even farther with where you want to go. With that being said, thank you so much for listening to another episode of Seeing Better, and I'll see you on the next one. Bye.